welcome to this technique tutorial. My name is Samantha Wiltshire and I'll be your tutor today. And today we're going to be learning all about experimental and gestural construction. So let's start with a workshop overview. We'll be going through the equipment you'll need for today's activity. We'll be talking through our objectives. We'll be understanding what gestural construction is. We're going to be practicing some together, and then we'll be concluding and going through some references and further activities. Starting with your equipment today, you'll need a piece of paper, some charcoal or pencil, a hard eraser, a kneadable eraser. If you'd like to, you can use a marl stick to stop yourself from smudging. If you're not sure what that is, make sure to take a look at our What is a Marl Stick video on our YouTube channel. And you might also want tissues or paper stumps for blending. I won't be using that today in my demo, but feel free to include any extra equipment that might help you to push your artwork further if you would like to. And our goal for today is that we'd like to learn to see in some brand new ways. We want to understand where to begin, especially if your style is a little bit less traditional. If you've got more of an expressive contemporary style, it can be hard to know where to start or how best to incorporate what we have learned so far about measuring and construction into your own personal way of working. It's going to hopefully help us to build some more efficiency in our drawing process. We're going to work towards developing a personal style through today's activity. And we're also aiming to capture gesture, movement, and attitude, just like our tutor Peter Mackey has here in the drawing featured on this slide. First of all, what is gestural construction? So gestural construction is any process which prioritizes capturing movement or character. It's characterized by being a fairly rapid process. So you're working very quickly, usually, but not always. It often incorporates scribble and unique forms of mark making. It's often free, flowing, and organic. Sometimes it includes deliberate abstraction, warping, or rejection of traditional measuring. So today I'll be showing you how you can integrate some of our understanding of traditional measuring that we've built, but also how you can then push beyond that and how you can take the bits of it which might be helpful and then reject the bits of it that might be a little bit too maybe meticulous for your personal style. But you're going to be able to find for yourself how much or how little you'd like to incorporate. Gestural construction is often also a little bit more of a minimalistic approach, depending on the subject and depending on the person. And as we mentioned previously, it can be combined with some traditional construction techniques and also traditional tonal work techniques as well. All right, so we're going to be practicing some gestural construction now together today. You're going to need to screenshot this slide and print out the image so that you can follow along with us, or you might like to choose your own reference picture. For gestural construction, I find things like fabric with a lot of movement or animals running or even people in motion, as long as they're simple enough for your personal level of skill right now, are perfect for this activity. So find something that you like, print it on out, and then we'll get started. So the first step is going to be to find the gesture of the image. We're going to want to simplify whatever action is occurring or whatever shapes we can see into only a few lines and hopefully as few as we possibly can. And it's okay if these are curved lines for today's activity. I know in the past we've preferred more boxy rectilinear lines. That's not so relevant for us today. So feel free to use whatever sorts of lines you feel comfortable with. So let's head over to my drawing station and I'll show you how it works.
All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do when we're approaching a gestural construction is we're going to want to think about what sort of basic lines and shapes we can see to start with. And you might want to start by just getting your pencil or even a pen if it helps you to see it better, just kind of getting a bit of a feel for the subject. So just sort of getting the idea and understanding how I would like to approach it. And what I can see in particular on the cheetah is there seems to be 1, 2 swooping big gestural lines first. So I'm going to start with those 2 gestural lines. I'm going to go 1. I know that the head is going to be over here somewhere. And then we're going to want a second big swooping gesture line. It's probably going to stop maybe around about there. And I'm not being tidy at all. You'll notice this is a very different approach to what we've usually done in other videos. We're really not going to want to think too hard about the gestural construction. You're just going to want to dive in and feel your way through straight away. You'll notice that I'm coming in and I'm fixing mine because I felt that the tail gesture line was too high up. So even though we're not being overly meticulous, we're definitely still wanting to adjust where we see things that might not be quite right.
All right, so now we've got our basic gesture lines down. The next step is going to be to loosely map in any big shapes that we can see. And we want to work from the big shapes into the small details gradually. So on top of your gesture lines, you're going to break the image down into these shapes. You can use scribbly lines. You can use slightly more tidy lines. See what feels comfortable for you. And you can choose to measure as well at around about this point to get a little bit more accuracy, or you can use sight alone if you'd prefer. And we're going to try and summarize the complicated or difficult areas wherever possible. So in these leg areas, for example, I've broken them down into very simple shapes wherever I can. You could even simplify further than I have, and you could just have this triangle and this shape. You could just have the curve of this leg and not try and guess what's happening in this dark shadow in the center at all if you feel more comfortable. All right, so we've got a couple of lines which are going to help us moving forward. Now I want to continue to explore the form. I want to start to find not only lines which are important, but basic simple shapes which are important as well. I'm going to keep in mind my rule that I need to put the small things into the big things. So I'm starting big and then I'm gradually zooming in. So I'm not going to want to just dive straight into the face, into all of those details. I'm really going to want to take my time. And at this stage, if measuring is more your style, you could start to integrate some of our other more traditional measuring techniques. If you're really feeling like you want to be as loose and as free as possible, if it's not going to matter to you whether it looks like exactly this cheetah or maybe this cheetah's cousin, then feel free not to measure as much and just to really feel your way intuitively through the drawing. Now, in other measuring videos and construction videos, we've really avoided using any curvy lines until the very end as much as possible. In the case of gestural drawing, that's not going to be an issue at all whatsoever. Feel free to use as many curves as you wish. Now, you may like to have both a physical printed image of your cheetah and also a digital image. The reason being that when you print out an image, especially small scale, I would recommend printing larger than this if you're able to at home. When you print out an image, it does flatten it ever so slightly. Also, sometimes you get glare. There's a whole variety of different issues. So having both printed so that you can draw all over it and you can measure more easily, and a screen where you can actually zoom in and see what's happening in some of this small detail later on when you're ready, is a really helpful way to approach this. You can also use plumb lining. So I'm going to see how the head and that back hip line up. and they should line up approximately with the ear and the head sticking up just a tiny bit. Also, don't forget to check the angles of your lines. Those are really important. I can see right now that one of my angles is most definitely off. I'm looking at the size of this triangle right here. So I'm thinking in terms of simple geometry. I'm also thinking about the negative space. What size is this gap between that bottom and lower paw? It's not very large at all. And be completely unafraid to adjust this as I go. It's still super flexible. I'm not committed to any of what's happening just yet. I'm keeping the paws really simple shapes. They're going to be kind of an oval with a bit of a diamond like point or an angle or two where the toes go. Be really cautious about under exaggerating feet because whenever we look at anything, really, we're focusing on faces. And so people tend to underestimate how large they are. This is a powerful big cat. So we want him to have powerful paws for running. Don't be afraid to summarize also. I don't really know what happens down here near this bottom foot. So I'm not going to try and fill in the blanks. I'm going to just draw exactly what I can see rather than overcomplicating it. And my tail swoops up, their tail sits further down. So I'm really looking out for areas where, you know, I may have not quite got that exact shape or that exact angle. I'm going through my correction process. One of the ways that I can really help myself to do that is by playing the game of spot the difference. So I'm going to be flicking my eyes fairly rapidly back and forth between the reference and my drawing in the hopes of spotting something I might have missed. I can see some of these shadows giving me hints and clues about what's going on that particular area of the body. I can see some light and some dark here. That's showing me that there might be some sort of a shoulder area here, or that's an area which comes out and then down again into the shadows. I also know there's going to be some shadow down here, so I'm putting a little mark as a reminder for myself. All right, now one of the tricks with this really is to not overthink it. I want you to put aside the fact that a cheetah is a complicated animal with complicated anatomy. I want you to put aside the fact that you maybe haven't done a lot of drawing of animals like this in the past. I want you to just trust in the shapes that you can see fully as much as possible.
You'll notice that I'm occasionally going in and making particular lines darker than others. And the reason for that is because I'm now starting to find my lines which are going to have more emphasis than others. All right, so now for the next step, we're going to continue to check our accuracy and adjust. We're also going to be adding some detail as well. So remember that you can use either your measuring techniques or just observation techniques like flicking your eyes back and forth to place spot the difference. I personally prefer both, but see what works for you. And we're going to want to seek out these mistakes and apply corrections wherever we can. Even at this stage, we're not committed to the lines that we've put down. We can move them and be flexible. Once you've got your shapes to a point where you're happy with them, we're then going to be going in and applying some detail, like you can see that I've done here in the face and also on the toes. Look at this huge gap I have here compared to the gap down here. So I'm starting to really pick out things which are definitely not quite right. And it's at this stage where you might also want to integrate some measuring. Even if you're not a huge measurer in general, even if you wanted to do as little measurement as possible for this particular drawing, even just some of the largest relationships are valuable to double check. For example, how long is my tail compared to my body from the cheetah's nose to the hip bone? The body should be just a tiny little bit longer than the tail. Let me use my pencil and double check that that's the case. Yes, it is. Let me double check how tall this chest area is going to be compared to something else from the forehead to the base of the neck. There I go. That one's looking pretty all right as well. Now let me check from the base of the chest to the bottom of the foot. That should go to almost the end of my cat's body, just past the front of that curled over leg. Let me also check that I'm happy with the shape of my leg before using that as a measurement. Okay, so that's also around about right. Let me check again. So around about there is going to be my stopping point. But there's some other little adjustments that I can spot that might be helpful for me to make. I can draw a line between these two. So that back foot should be more about here. Which makes this area here not quite right also. You'll notice that I'm not tidying up my construction marks as much as I go. And that's because I might actually enjoy to leave some of those at the very end if I decide that I like them and they maybe help me to describe the movement of my animal. Let me also see how this lines up. That should be more about there. And then let me draw a line from here to here. And I'm going to see if I can carve this out using my negative space as a guide. And when I did that, one thing that became obvious to me was that this is too tall right here. If there are any construction lines I know for sure that I don't want, I can remove those. I can also see that the shadow here is going to be slightly angled too, and that's going to help me with the amount of space here and the fact that I was feeling that there was a little bit too much space in here. I'm also using the shadows to help me find certain shapes that maybe I'm missing or maybe could be described a little bit better. I can see a shadow shape right here. That might help me. And a shadow shape here on the neck that might help me too. I can see one here on the bottom section of the face as well. I can see a facet here of the side of the cheek with that shadow right there, which is going to help me to find where that eye area is going to go, because I can make this triangle of the marking around the eye. I can also start to look for the shape of the ear. I can start to find small sections of core that I might want to have in more detail. I want to follow the major shadow of the paw.
All right, so now that we have the base of our construction down, we can, if we'd like to, apply a little bit of tonal work. Now, it might be strange to see tonal work included in a construction video. The reason for putting this in as well is because if you've not been using comparative measuring techniques, if you've just been using sight, sometimes putting in some of the big tonal areas to start can actually really help you to find your proportion. It can actually almost end up being a part of your construction. I would consider what I have here on my cheetah my base tonal work. And from here, I would refine it. I would add spots. Or since it's a gestural art making video, maybe I would actually leave it like this and have it be very simple and scruffy and a little bit rough around the edges. So when you're ready for some tonal work, if you wish, you might like to follow along with me now, but you could also refer to other rendering videos that we've made on our YouTube channel. And you could push that rendering as far and make it as refined as you wish, or leave it very rough like I have today. If you're happy with your cheetah as a line drawing and as just some scruffy construction with your scaffolding, rather than adding any tonal work, you could actually leave it there for today, especially if you're still building up your skill set and you're not yet feeling confident to go into some tonal work. So I'm going to start by squinting at my work, and I'm going to map in just the largest tonal areas that I can see. I can see new areas like there's this box right here of shadow that I had not paid quite enough attention to before right here. I'm even taking a bit of a scribbly approach to my tonal work as well.
Make sure also at this stage to stop and look close. I just looked really, really close and realized that the edge of the arm was in a different place than I had initially mapped out. So this is the part where we finally get to do all the little details. We finally get to really spend some time understanding the mechanics of what it is that might be going on with the arms and in those shadowy areas. Because we waited for a while, because we didn't rush into that, we're going to have better overall proportions. And there you have it. You've got your very first gestural construction drawing. And you can now go forward and refine it as much or as little as you like. I hope that you will practice this, and I hope that you'll start to determine how much or how little you would like to be gestural in your own personal practice for your own style.
All right, so we're also briefly going to talk today about image transfer as an experimental construction technique. The reason for mentioning image transfer, even though we won't be trying it out together today, is because even though people have pretty divided opinions about whether using image transfer is, is an artistic technique or whether it's just taking a shortcut, lots of contemporary artists have built successful practices using various different types of image transfer. So it's really important going into this industry that we understand that this sort of art making is definitely floating around. So in terms of image transfer, you might just think, oh, well, that means using tracing paper or that means using a projector. But contemporary artists have found many more really sophisticated ways than just that to transfer an image onto another surface. And we've actually been experimenting with image transfer for a really long time if we're thinking about art history. In particular, I have here on this slide a recommendation for you to go and watch the documentary Tim's Vermeer. In this documentary, Tim tries to replicate a Vermeer painting, being not an artist himself, and he tries to replicate it exactly using an image transfer technique involving mirrors that some art historians suspect that Vermeer himself used as well. So take a look at this documentary in your own time if you can. And then you'll see here that on the right, I've duct taped a ruler to a water bottle. I've taped a image I wanted to recreate onto I think it was a cereal box, and I popped it upside down. And then to that ruler, I've attached the mirror from a little powder compact of makeup. And I have created for myself a little DIY Tim's Vermeer drawing machine. And after watching that documentary, I had a little go myself. And you might also like to have a play with this technique using a really simple setup just like this. So some of the different types of image transfer techniques that artists use today include drawing machines or mirror contraptions like it's suspected Vermeer may have. They might use transfer techniques involving gesso or glue. A technique that I've tried before is where you gesso the front of a printed image. So that's the colored side with the image, and then you actually stick it down, and then you get water on your fingers and you rub the white paper off of the back so that it peels and comes off. And then you're left with the part of the color in the image that was stuck to that gesso. That's really fun to play around with. Some artists also use projection onto a surface or tracing paper. And then there's also collage and mixed media. If you think about it, collage in itself is an image transfer technique because you're transferring it from its original source, which was maybe a magazine or a newspaper, and now you're including it on your artwork in a new way and you're recontextualizing it for your own practice. And I would challenge you today to also consider whether or not you feel that image transfer is a shortcut or whether you think that it's actually a sophisticated artistic process that maybe you'd like to incorporate in your own practice. It's really important, especially for our art history and theory studies, that we practice forming opinions of our own. And for our forming opinions of our own will help us to understand who we want to be as contemporary artists ourselves. All right, and now for some further activities you can also try at home. You could try out a blind drawing. So that's where you look at your subject, but you never look at the drawing itself until it's finished. You could try a continuous line drawing. This is where once you place your drawing material down on the page to start drawing, you do not lift it from the page until that drawing is complete. And you could also have a go at some minimalist line drawing. So trying to capture your subject with only a few lines. This is kind of similar to what we started when we found the gesture lines of our cheetah. And you can see that on the right, I've got an image by Picasso where he's done a minimalistic line drawing of a nude. And here are our image references for today, and also some research references if you wanted to go and investigate further. You'll also notice that I have the link to the picture of the cheetah running. So if you would like a better quality image of that, rather than taking a screenshot of our slide today, you might just like to look that up on the internet yourself. And a reminder of our long-term goal. Our long-term goal today is to form a unique style and perfect the construction process for your unique personal style. So, see what works for you. Make sure to take notes in your visual diary so that you start to form a bit of your own identity. And as always, happy art making.